You've heard us mention VDI a couple of times, so we're going to start there. First of all, we're going to bring up a customer from Bourgault Industries. Now, Mike is joining us from Canada today, and Bourgault, for those of you who don't know, makes high-end, technologically advanced farming equipment. So they've got a lot of very needy engineers that they had to go through and fix some challenges with. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce and bring up Mike Bailey, IT infrastructure leader at Bourgault. So Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's an honor.
So, you know, we've talked a little bit over the last couple of days as we've gotten to know each other here, just about some of the problems that you all were facing and how you addressed that. So could you start by just telling us a little bit about why you all thought about shifting to virtual desktops?
Yeah, so we kind of had two main driving factors, but before I can get into those details, I just want the audience to know that Bourgault is a global manufacturer. So we span, we're primary in Canada, but we also are in the United States, we're in Australia, India, and so on. So being global was one of the first driving factors is that we kind of suffered from what we refer to as data sprawl. And so what I mean by that is we had data in Canada, we had data in the US, Australia, and it kind of created a bit of a collaboration problem and some confusion with our users. Sometimes they'd be like, well, why is this fast to access? But when I look at this file, it's slow. At the same time, it also, we had an IT operational concern where we had a backup solution in Australia. We had a backup solution in Canada. And we felt that, why can't we just have one and we just maintain one backup solution? Just for an example, right? So we were looking for a technology that allowed us to, what we refer to as push the pixel, not the data. And that was very important for us because pushing data takes way more effort than a small little pixel does. So then that kind of led into our second driving factor, and that was we had an increasing need for our engineering to have more enhanced accessibility. We had some engineers that were rotating to kind of more rural locations, even at a farm, which didn't really have world-class internet. So everyone here can probably imagine, if you have engineers, that trying to push that complex model to a farm where their compute is definitely a challenge. And so again, focusing on the pushing the pixel, not the data, VDI was that solution for us.
Absolutely, and when we were talking yesterday, I stole that phrase from you and wrote it down. Yeah. I really like that, push the pixel, not the data. But talk to us a little bit more about what that migration was actually like in practice.
Right, so we started small. We started with 4 users, and those 4 users were primarily the 4 engineers that we had that were having their issues with accessibility. Mm-hmm. Now, it didn't take long. We went from 4 users and we scaled over a multiple few years and we hit up to 400. And so what our main focus was is that we wanted to build a solution that allowed us to start small and continue to build it and scale it. And so one of our implementation plans was actually to just start implementing to our furthest remote location. And so a quick Google search actually revealed Perth, which is where one of our offices are, is actually the furthest or the furthest place I could stand on land from our Canadian data center. So we started in Perth. And it was really simple. We went there, we assessed their infrastructure, we set up the infrastructure in Canada, and then basically go live, we had them log into their virtual desktops that were also in Canada. And so they were accessing their data as well as their compute all in a local environment, as well as having now the local experience of the Canadian services. So that's basically how we did. And then as we transitioned, we just continued to work closer and closer to home.
Okay, so start small and scale. Yeah. You got a vacation to Australia out of it.
Yeah, and our IT staff is actually kind of upset. We haven't been back there since 2017. So.
Well, you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
But what kind of outcomes did you see from that?
So we saw a ton of outcomes, very positive, and I think a lot of people can resonate here. If you have engineers in your environment, when you have, say, 90 engineers, that means you have 90 engineering desktops. And then you also have some of those engineers that have mobile engineering laptops. And when you have 90 plus systems, that means you have 90 GPUs in these systems. And so one of the biggest things that we noticed was the reliability of VDI. And so when we had these 90 plus systems, we were in a situation where every month we had 1, 2, maybe 3 GPU failures in these desktops, and then it would tie up our IT operations team to triage, get them back up and running, and so on. And so in comparison to VDI, we have 12 GPUs compared to the 90 plus that we had back in the day. And since 2017, we've only actually had 1 GPU fail.
Wow. So massive consolidation, reliability gains. That kind of talks about the user a little bit and kind of that upfront acquisition cost. What about the long term? Have you seen any efficiencies that the business is going to get to enjoy?
Yeah, so I could talk about this a lot. But a few things that I want to highlight is that I've already talked about the GPU savings. We're not replacing $1,200, $2,500 GPUs in these workstations anymore. But that's just one component. Now we no longer have power supply failures. We no longer have bad sticks of RAM failing at these edge devices. So when you think of all those peripherals, the downtime, that was definitely, again, a major benefit on the bottom line.
Yeah.
Then, for us, we were able to remove all of our global infrastructure. We have nothing but switches and firewalls in all of our remote sites. So everything is centralized now in our Canadian data centers where all of our IT staff is as well. So there's cost savings there. And then another big factor that people actually overlook quite frequently is the power savings that we get from VDI. And so we actually performed a full power study compared to our traditional desktop fleet to our VDI fleet. And we range anywhere between 70 to 76% reduction in power consumption. And in this power study, we obviously included, the thin clients, the servers, the networking, the storage, et cetera, right? So it's massive. So one of the key things, though, that we really like to talk about when we're talking about the environmental benefits of VDI is that for every 23 desktops that we move to VDI, we save the equivalent of power to power a home for an entire year.
Wow.
Yes.
That's really meaningful.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for sharing your story today.
Yes.
Thank you for being a customer. It was great
Absolutely.
to have you here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you'd be happy to answer questions for customers if they've got them after the session as well.
100%.
Yeah. So thanks, Mike.